Danny, hello, hello.
How
Good
are
to
you,
see you
Katja?
again.
Good to see you again.
Part
too. Thank
two.
You. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
It's an honor.
So once the camera stopped rolling last time,
Yeah.
you were telling me things that were fascinating, and I said we have to do this again before you leave and go back to Tennessee, right? Nashville.
At this point, it's already Orlando. We're moving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back to where we were, you were telling me the things that you've learned during your trips. Could you share with us some of those revelations?
Well, I mean, I think So I think what you're referring to is one particular, I guess you can call it trip that I had, in which I was shown the full structure, or what seems to be kind of like how everything works, kind of thing. And the truth is that I'm always very careful with how I'm outlining it because it touches upon a lot of people's beliefs. And even though it is, you can say it's just my account of it, at the same time, it was presented to me as if this is, kind of like the ultimate thing. And I'm sure that some of it is probably, it's a fractal. So some of it is probably personal, but it connects to the ultimate. And I sometimes talk about it, and the reason I'm doing this whole, preamble to it is because I don't know to what extent I would personally take value out of somebody else's account, right? So this is why whenever I speak, I'm very aware that trip reports and things like this, they're a lot less powerful than something that you can present that others can partake in and actually experience for themselves. So that being said, among all the different trips that I've had, of which I've had, thousands of them, and this particular one was with 4-ACO, or 4-ACO as some people call it. It's basically synthetic mushrooms, and it's very similar to DMT in its presentation, but it lasts for about 4 or 5 hours, and it's not as intense in terms of the impact on the body, but also the energy is pretty up there.
Sorry, for people who, like myself, who are so not in the subject, what is synthetic mushrooms? How are they produced?
No, so they're. I mean, in the end of the day, all of psychedelic substances, they're basically molecules, right? So when you ingest magic mushrooms, it's not the mushrooms that give you the effect. It's psilocybin, which is the molecule inside of right? So you can extract it, or you can produce it in a lab. We know how to synthesize things, right? So you can, when you synthesize things, you have a little bit of more freedom, especially if it's a complicated molecule. And also, you have the opportunity to actually clean the material. So the world kind of divides into these two camps. There's the Puritans and the people that they don't mind that much. I personally fall on the side that synthetic is usually better, actually, which is kind of surprising to people, for quite a few reasons. One of them is that you actually damage the biosphere less. And secondly, which is something that people don't think about because they think, oh, natural. So this is something that was emphasized to me by, I don't know if she wants to be mentioned by name, so we'll keep her anonymous, but she's an incredible 5-MeO DMT facilitator. And she uses the version called the Jaguar, which is basically the synthetic version of it. So it's not extracted from the frog, as it is in the shamanic traditions. So one school of thought would say, hey, like this is not natural, whatever. But the truth is that ever since this became more known, actually the biosphere of the frog started suffering because the frogs do get damaged in the process. So it's actually better. It's a more humane thing to do. And also it's cleaner because you guarantee that you know exactly what you're getting. This is where actually the proper role of knowledge comes in, actually.
Does it make it more potent? Does it make it different in any way?
Well, it makes it less prone to mistakes. So like less chances that you're going to feel different anxiety in the body and things like this, because when you extract it from something in nature, there's no guarantee it's going to be completely pure, right? Because something always might come in, and distillation and freebasing is a very sensitive process. So in this case, it's not exactly the same shape as psilocybin. 4-ACO, I have to be honest that I probably should look up the actual chemical structure to see how different they are, but they're just in the market, they're called synthetic mushrooms, but they are a different kind of molecule. And it does contain the word DMT in it, but so does psilocybin. Like if you look at the chemical name of psilocybin, it has dimethyltryptamine in it. So it's just different arrangements of the molecules, basically. So 4-ACO is something that they make in a lab, and but the experience of it is very much kind of between mushrooms and DMT. It's much more pristine in its presentation. It's much more coherent and much more digital in its nature, but unfolds as long as mushrooms, 5 to 6 hours, something like that. So this experience that I told you about after we wrapped up last time was on 4-ACO. It was in Turkey. I remember we were at this Airbnb in Turkey, and I was due for like a long, like a big dose, and we prepped everything. I did my little ceremonial prep, and in that trip, I was basically presented with information in the form of here's how things are. It wasn't usually in these psychedelic scenarios. You have a certain form of vagueness to it, even though the presentation might be specific, but there's a certain dreamlike quality to it. It's more like kind of like you're there, but you're not there. But with that, it was not like that. It was very matter of fact. I would almost want to say virtual augmented reality like. So it was just kind of presented to me as an overlaid content. And in it, I was basically presented information in the way of, okay, you wanted to know how everything works. Here's how everything works. That's a lot of exposition for this, but I want to make sure everybody understand. It's not that I'm saying to you, I'm necessarily telling you that's how things work. I'm reporting honestly about what my experience of it was, which is it was not presented to me as here's a metaphor. It was presented as if a teacher walked into the room with a little TV and played a video, like an educational video, right? So what I was shown, first of all, is that there's an entire structure outside of what we call our multiverse, so we started there, if you can imagine that, right? We're not even talking, everything I'm going to say is outside of our universe. It's outside of our multiverse. Okay, we're not talking about inside of our world. So if anybody, some of the characters I mentioned, people sometimes say, oh, it's Gaia. No. Gaia is Earth. It's way, way right here. We're talking way out there. Okay, so we started from outside of our multiverse. They showed me that there's a system of 3 different spheres, which I don't know what they are. I do know that one of these spheres is our multiverse. Not universe, one of the spheres is our multiverse. The other 2, I don't even know what they are. But there's some kind of a tri-system of a thing. Outside of that, I saw an array of, there's no better, term for it, but gods. They're essentially gods, which what I took to mean is, well, there's a clear distinction between what you are and what gods are. So no, we're not gods. Now, we have godlike qualities in terms of processing information power, the ability to grow into infinite space, and a lot of other things that make itself godlike. But being what that is on that side of the ledger, it seems to be fundamentally different. And then I saw a hierarchy of these gods, and it was a very long list of people all the way up. Now, obviously, I'm saying people because there's no better words. They were presented to me as kind of like, beings. What was surprising is that they had genders. So they were very clearly male or female. Do with it what you will. And what I was shown is that the biblical God is real. He is not at the top. He is somewhere.
You're referring to which, the Father or the Son? Yeah, I mean Jesus or...
We'll get to that. Yeah. So what I was shown first is that there's the first of all, the presentation of the biblical God, whatever the biblical is real. So Yehovah, basically. And but what was interesting is that way, way up there, and it did not look like it was 2 or 3 levels above. It looked like almost infinite levels above. There's a woman. The woman is all the way at the top. Now, before all women celebrate, She does not seem to be the kind of thing that would care whether you, think she would not necessarily care that you're part of her the same energy. She does not have that kind of affinity for you. So, I don't want to say it was emphasized, but it was made clear where do not mess with her. And you kind of she told me, I think that was for you. I don't think so. It was very clear that basically everything, there's a reason why she's at the top. I don't know if it has to do with the level of power, level of actual ability to control everything. I don't know what that is, but it was very clear that everybody basically, there's a reason why everybody bowed to her. And then the higher up you go at the hierarchy, and again, that was very arbitrary, obviously, because I have no idea why things like gods would have genders. First of all, it doesn't make any sense to me. And also, especially, why would it be a gender, male or female? Wouldn't it be like a ball of light or something? You know what I mean? Like it makes more sense.
Especially where the reference to gender does not seem to have any significance or any utility.
Well, what seems to be the case is that male and female, what they are energetically, archetypically, they're essentially, they're not a social construct, they are the most fundamental forces that exist, basically. Okay?
So just to be clear, what you're describing seems to be referring to that energetic force rather than any attributes that we would think.
The essence of what it is, right? Yin and yang, right? The destructive and the constructive. So if you think about it, like the best way I found to define, obviously does not comport to our simple definitions of it. We might have some Venn diagrams that approach it, like we think of good and evil, we think of male and female in terms of what we know about humans, but the essence of what it really is much deeper than that, right? So then some people say, oh, it makes sense because it's the womb, right? You know, the womb gives. I was like, okay, well that's a very human concept, right? So then I understand what they're trying to say, but I'm constantly trying to just allow it to express what it really is versus me trying to overlay what it is. And it's difficult to do because obviously you always come with your predisposition of perceiving the world, but at the same time, there is this ability that we have to see things more neutrally. And that's a skill that you got to hone, right? And it's important to not get stuck in that skill. So when you do understand, when there's a moment of understanding, you do want to take on board what is being communicated. So it's not like it's a cloud forever. It's a cloud at first, but then when it solidifies itself, it does not always mean that, oh, well, now you decided what it is. No, you might have understood what it is, which is a different kind of state, right? Then you actually have a responsibility to stand on that understanding, which is a very shifty ground.
Did you have resistance to
I never have resistance in these spaces. I never resist. I just kind of allow it. I think it's maybe why I'm pretty well predisposed to kind of perceive all of this, because I'm really doing my best to do that, which is, now it doesn't mean that I'm always successful. Of course, confabulation is a natural process that the mind is always involved in, because it's just the brain is trying to constantly make sense of it. But I'm just reporting to you the things that were very clear. Like, basically, they show me that it's like this super, again, I hope I'm not going to be struck by lightning, but she's basically just showing me like a super hot babe in like a skirt, and people will be like, oh, well, that's your, no. I'm actually, as much as sometimes I might appear as a playboy, I'm not, it's actually not how my brain works. Like, it's not my perception of women. So when that was shown to me, that is actually, it was weird. Like, it did not belong to any, like, there was no, like, if you ask me, what would you imagine, if let's say somebody came to me and say, hey, I'm going to tell you right now that for sure the ultimate God is a woman. And if I would never see any of that, they would say, describe to me what you think it would be. What I would see is, I don't know, something more biblical. Like, I would see, Jesus' mother, right? Like, I would see that kind of a thing. Like, very, I have a friend, Ireless, an incredible musician, more along the lines of that. That's what I will show you an image. It's kind of like an angel, definitely not sexualized. Like, it would be much more like ethereal, like very profound, right? Why would that be that? I have no idea, but it was very clearly that. And I think that they don't do anything without a purpose when they're showing you things. So I think it was emphasized that it has this quality of, I guess, if you think about what sexual attraction is, especially from very beautiful women, there's a power, but there's always there's always a price, right? Nothing is for free ever, right? So there's always something there. The more you interact with Russian women, you know that.
You don't have to tell me that. Yes, I know. That's why I'm nodding.
But it's almost kind of funny that there's a part of us that always knows this, right? But at the same time, it's almost like, well, I mean, things are always available, but at the same time, you need to know that things are always keeping themselves in balance, right? So every action has some kind of a result, right? And the reason I'm saying it is because I think that there was a reason why they emphasized the sexuality of it, right? She was not, again, it was very, very subtle. So it was not, she wasn't like in a get-up, like trying to, but she just clearly a very attractive thing.
But you know, I think there is a thing with sexuality and sort of spiritual things and esoteric things, because I mean there are layers upon layers of this whole subject, so it's kind of difficult to uncover fast. But of course, there are a ton of cults. Mm-hmm. Where the sexuality is obviously, is misused and, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, and I've heard it, and I think that rings true. I think there is a fine line where the energy, we might, I don't know, like the affinity that we're able to form with people on a spiritual level, mm-hmm. I think sometime has a translation into the physical, and people, I don't want to say confuse, but they feel something sexual and they translate it into something very immediate. But the sexual energy, a lot of the times, people follow spiritual leaders and they feel sexual attraction.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that sexual attraction is the connection that they made between what they're feeling and what that actually is, because the affinity they're forming is so deep that they're kind of linking it. They want to link it to something strong, and they're linking it to sexuality. So I don't think in the most immediate sense.
I agree, but I don't think they're confused. I think it is a sexual energy. So I think sexual energy is a creative force, and I mean a lot of comedians pointed it out, but it's absolutely true, which is that literally guys would never do anything unless there would be attractive women in the world. Like literally, they would do nothing. They would never drive nice cars. We don't give a damn. They would just play video games all day. Okay, nothing would be done ever. And it's funny, but it's true. Like most stuff that we do, even if we don't realize, is to impress women, right? And I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that the sexual energy is a creative energy. So I don't think people are confused. I think it's just that. It's just like when you surf, right? There's a wave you got to catch. And there's infinite ways to miss the wave. There's very few ways to ride the wave perfectly. I think it's really the art is riding that wave. And this is, the Kama Sutra and in general, that whole practice of coming at spirituality through the sexual energy, through exploring these channels, it's what it's about. It's understanding that all of these ideas that we have, they're not completely out of bound, but at the same time, they are confusing us from what in fact is going on. If you ask yourself, well, listen, like if we live in a perfect world where jealousy is not a thing, and why can't we just hey, we're attracted to each other, why can't we just have sex? What's the problem? Well, okay, listen, you can say, well, because all these social constructs that it says that you're not supposed to, if you're committed to a partner, now you're not supposed to do this. Okay, well then now you have some people that are polyamorous, right? They're trying to ride that wave in a different way. They're trying to combine these energies. It's a very noble attempt to do this kind of stuff, and jealousy inevitably still creeps in because you have, the primate element is we are the owning thing, right? That's just a natural thing actually to primates because it's territory, it's that kind of stuff. But I do think that all these things have deeper components. So you can say, on the one hand, you can say, well, it's all ideas that we have that prevents us from, that makes us feel bad for when we shouldn't feel bad. But at the same time, it might have these deeper components where actually one idea that kind of floats out there is that it's essentially God's way of testing, your loyalty to him, right? Which is kind of like, if you fail that, how can you possibly say no to Satan with certain, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like...
I think it's not just the idea of floating. It's literally in the Bible.
Well, I don't know. No, I don't know if that idea is ever made explicit in the Bible.
Nothing is made explicit in the Bible.
A lot of things are made explicit
You
in
think?
the Bible. Yeah, like how many slaves you can own. But
I think, well, I guess
And how you can beat
which
them.
part of the
Yeah,
Bible
yeah.
also.
Well, so what I'm saying, some things are explicit in the Bible. But so if we want to look at... I'm trying to stay without the interpretations to the extent that I possibly can. It's a very difficult thing to do.
But
because
it's very hard to do, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody want to jump at conclusions, obviously,
Yeah.
because it's controversial things that you are discussing, and and I guess people get triggered and or just want explanations
Yeah.
because they might, I don't know, feel something, or something might resonate, but they can't explain it, and people
Yeah.
want some sort of reassurance. So it's understandable that people would feel all those different type of ways.
Yeah, so it's interesting because if you look at... So the only way that you can approach a subject seriously without knowing much about it yourself is by trying your best to work with large bodies of work that are already forms of consolidation of very complex information done for many, many years by experts, right? So for all intents and purposes, if we use the example of, I don't know, like why do we accept certain things in physics that we talk about, entanglement and all these things? Do most of us understand the equations? No. Most people have no idea how to read quantum mechanics equations, right, or quantum field theory. But we assume that because there's and by the way, when I say assume, I don't mean like falsely assume, but we assume that because certain things are made in the market work, and because our theories, formulate into actionable things in the world, it's a good indicator that we understand something, right? And then the experts in the field who are working in that and looking at the details, we have to trust what they're saying. And nowadays, it's people are a lot looser with what they think should be taken into account, and kind of like, it's kind of funny how everybody thinks they're experts. But the truth is that when it matters, we always defer to the experts.
Well, I think it's extremely important what you just raised, because I think in the world that we live in now, as you rightly said, everybody are kind of an expert without being an expert, and
Yeah.
they've heard something. And an anecdote which I love the most, that I've personally experienced, people saying, "Oh, you don't have to watch that. I watched it. Here are the clip notes."
Mm-hmm.
And it's the most bizarre thing to me is, why would you not want to explore things that you can explore for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, what you're talking about, yes, I can say that I will never know 1/100th of what quantum physics has discovered or proved, or hypothesis, etc., etc. So, of course, and there are a lot of fields like that. I think it's just those sort of general explanations that we go by, as we were talking about entanglement and superposition last time. It's okay, so what's the explanation? Oh, it's about that. Oh, that makes sense. Just sort of on very, very basic level, without going into any type of mathematics. And as you rightly said, we have to trust everything else.
Well, you have results in the world which it gives it a bit more credence. And that's an important part. So, for example, in the example that you gave of the whole market of people who commentators, right? They kind of, for me, what's a valuable thing in that market, which it's weird that almost nobody hits that mark. There's a few, I can mention them. Their job should be the most authentic and self-aware expression of that. So, there's one YouTuber, man, I gotta remember his name. Long hair, Italian guy. I'll remember his name in a moment. I'll just look it up. But he has this wonderful style of, like, he talks about all kinds. He's like a amateur historian, and he was a teacher, and he Metatron, I think his name is. Yeah, and he does it perfectly. Like, if you ever watch his video, it doesn't matter what he's talking about. it's clear to you that he's an honest interlocutor. Okay, so he would take the information. Obviously, he has biases like any other person, but he's aware of them. He's like, hey, this is how I break down the information. That's how I usually approach it. That's what I see. I think this person is being a little bit heavy-handed. I'm talking about the ideas. I'm not talking about the person, you know. And also you can see that there's no vitriol. Like there's a true attempt to come at the information. Unfortunately, that is very rare, and it shouldn't be. Because I actually think that because of the amount of information, we do need people to do that more. Because we can't absorb all of it, right? But I want to be able to go to somebody and say, hey, I know that person is an honest person, and they would also be honest with me about their own blind spots. So if I feel like I need further clarification there, I can explore from there, right? So then it's valuable to me because I both got some of the information and I got it in a way that is somebody's really trying to bring it in a neutral way, being aware of their own biases, and they're telling me, hey, this is my blind spots, you know, if you want to explore more, by all means. That will be super valuable. The reason
you kind of have to audition them that way by watching quite a bit of stuff.
Unfortunately,
and just
people
figuring out who is.
But we're the casting directors, and we are terrible casting directors. We're casting the worst crew.
100%.
We vote for the most sensationalist thing that just hits this one button of emotion that we want to feel that already agrees with us. And both you and I know how crazy it is to watch like a worldwide brainwashing, even of very smart people. It's just unbelievable to watch, right? And then it's not a game, like, you know.
Do you think it's partly because people realize, and we can argue about it, and I'm sure there are people who will, you know, jump and say she's so wrong about this, but do you think subconsciously it's because people know how little power they have to change things?
How little power they have to change things?
Yeah, like, you know, if I'm watching the news, and I think it's obviously more and more like that, first of all, news stopped being news.
No,
it's not news anymore.
It's just opinion pieces. It's all opinion pieces.
It's literally just opinion pieces, and some of them are completely outrageous.
No, you just see that there's like a cat, like a meow, like there's no.
Well, you see it, I see it, but I meet people every day who look at me and say, "Well, no, it is like that because we know."
Yeah,
I'm like, but how do you know? Were you there? Did you how do you know? Like if you saw something with your own eyes, even then.
Yeah. You interpreted it through your own filter.
You know what I mean? But at least you have first-hand experience. If you're talking about some, you know, remote country, big, small, doesn't matter, and you're telling me what's happening there because someone put a lens to something specific, which first might be AI generated. These days, you never know. Second, can be just, you know, tricked in any other way. Or, so basically, it's, you know, it's a complete movie making or you know, story making. So I think in a way, subconsciously people, because I don't believe that people are stupid. I think that somehow we know things intuitively or on some whatever level, but it just can't come out to the conscious mind where you say, okay, I have to, you know, do something about it.
This is where there's a difference between a religious sentiment and a religious delusion. The religious sentiment is I feel something that feels correct to me in the moment where I'm interacting with it. Something I heard, somebody I saw, and I'm going to act. I'm going to try and proceed in that direction to see if it keeps feeling that way. So it's almost like you're going blind, you just go by how you feel, right? And you can say that there is this central column in existence that we can call God, which is kind of like the spinal cord of everything, that if you just stick to that feeling, it will lead you to the promised land, right? I think what happens is that very often people very easily slide into the religious delusion of it, which is that it starts being about the righteousness of me having the right path versus everybody else not having the right path. It's a very powerful emotion because it's people like thrust. They like they like this thing that kind of squeezes
because
you
they're
forward.
trying to convince themselves by convincing others. The louder you scream,
so I'm talking
the less
about the way it feels. Because if I have to ask myself, when I'm watching all of these conversations, one thing eventually became clear, that there's actually nothing in the informational space that does anything to change anything. So you can present a binary. You can present true or not true. Here's the claim you made, okay? Here's why it's not true. Here it is, right here. It's not a opinion. This is not true. Here's a picture. This is why it's not true. I'll explain to you why also what you see makes more sense. It does nothing. Because the feeling is always much stronger than anything you can ever think about. So what I'm trying to do is to ask myself, what is happening emotionally that causes that thing to keep unfolding, no matter what happens around it? And is there a way to reach in and make you feel less of that and more neutrality, so you can then reframe? This actually connects nicely to the next part of the vision, so that kind of floats nicely, which is that your whole life is a progression of these frames, and frames have to be progressed, so they have to progress in a logical way. So like you can't jump from this to all of a sudden a unicorn sitting in front of me, right? Even though you might be a unicorn as a person, I don't know. But like if I all of a sudden see a horse with a horn in front of me, I know something is happening. We shifted, yeah. Something is abnormal, good or bad, but something is abnormal. So because of that, I think that the maintaining a coherent frame connects our social tissue. That is the thing through which we're connected. So when we share ideas, it's a form of agreement that we are occupying the same mental space and we can trust each other. If you grow up in a culture, the reason that I realized that there's going to be some other, hopefully there's going to be some higher intervention, and it seems to be happening. But the reason that this, at this point in history, going about it through explanations is completely impossible, because this was being done for decades, in formative years when the brain is developing. So it is not just part of some new emergent trend that people are occupying. It is literally their identity, which is it's the deeper frames. It's the frames that point to how I am in relationship to the world. And that is something that is equivalent to life-threatening. So like if you take that away, for most people that's life-threatening. That it is equivalent to the level of danger. The reason I was talking about the experts is because the best I can do, if I want to really zoom out the whole way out, and we want to ask, okay, what makes sense in terms of like, what do you think this vision that you saw in relationship to what we really understand through our personal experience in life? So I can go, but I've lived enough years on this planet to know that, okay, some of it tracks. I have enough interaction with the opposite sex and watching people going through this whole thing to know what certain things are more or less true, right? Generally. But also, I know that there's certain contemplative ideas that are trying to create an overarching picture of what this all means. So in this case, those are the experts I'm referring to. And what's interesting is if you look at biblical scholars or rabbinical scholars or like anybody from the whole religious side of it, and you look at the Buddha, the experts, but they seem to be saying something very different, and it's not reconcilable.
Like what?
So, for example, in the biblical tradition, there's a big emphasis on the nuclear power of the family. A man and a woman. It never says that, but it is, like if we want to read the implied, it does kind of leaves a lot more room for men to be a little bit more men, right? Because it's kind of like, but it emphasizes that the unitary thing should always be at the forefront.
You should not break it. That's what
you should not break that covenant in terms of like how you don't want to bring turmoil to it.
And you're referring to the Old Testament or to the New Testament?
It's in both. It doesn't matter, right?
Well,
so your relationship is more with Jesus in the New Testament, but the emphasis on the family and how that plays into your relationship with Jesus is very much emphasized, both in communities and in the Bible in general. So this is I'll contrast it with the Buddha, for example, that the emphasis is on this unitary relationship, right? Which there's something wholesome about it. It's like a loyalty test, kind of, right? But there's also a container thing where you're learning how to hold a container that involves other people. In the Buddhistic tradition, the emphasis is very much on the other sex is literally nothing else but a distraction. It's only there to distract you from the final goal. So if you ever want to have any chance of exiting, family schmamly, no family.
But isn't
alone in a cave, that's it.
But isn't it the same with Christian mystics too? I mean, obviously, if you are a priest, and supposedly you are as a priest or as a part of the clergy, you're much more focused on the inner world, and that's why you're not supposed to have a wife, because that distracts, etc., etc. So they kind of track on that level.
Correct. The thing to emphasize is that the main difference is that Christianity gives room for most individuals, because most individuals are not priests, to go about it in this way and forming a family and everything. In the Buddhistic tradition, all leaders, they're not really leaders, because there's a huge emphasis on you are your own master. Simply, there might be a person you listen to, but your only way to salvation is through yourself. There's no one that can help you. There's no Jesus that will come and help you. There's no such thing in a Buddhistic tradition, which means everybody has to be a monk. If you actually want to exit, now it is true that they allow for, if they separate between a householder, as they call it, and a monk. So householders have to but what they postulate is that in a later life, whomever was a householder in this life will realize and would be able to become a monk. But there's no other way. You have to become a monk. Eventually you would have to walk alone on the path, right? In Christianity, there's no such thing. That's not reconcilable. Because if we're talking about truth claims, there is no way that both of them are correct, right? Now you can say... Unless what?
Well, it depends where you're walking, meaning what's the ultimate goal?
Exiting the karmic cycle, according to the Buddhistic traditions.
Yes.
Which is outside of heaven too. So heaven is inside of the karmic cycle according to Buddhistic tradition, which means that the heavens that exist, and even there's some conversation between whether the seven levels of heaven that the Buddhists believe in, I think it's 7, and is the biblical God somewhere there? Maybe, but according to the Buddha, if that is the case, as long as there's any content of any kind, it is the karmic cycle, which means that even if you're in the highest of realms and you spend enormous amount of years there, as long as you're in the karmic cycle, you still reincarnate, which means that you can still fall to the lows of hells. Now, the kicker is that if it is forever, you will spend literally eternity, both in the highest and in the lowest. So the only way out is out, which means just nirvana, which means just step out of the house.
As you can tell, I'm I like marrying the two.
I like
that.
Too.
I like the Buddhist tradition. I like the Christian tradition. I think the funny part is because it's something we can't prove one way or another in this life for sure. That's why to me it's always such a fascinating and yet funny sometimes topic, because we can talk and understand each other, but sometimes you're with people who gonna fight you to the end, try to pick what's a better.
I want to be super clear. I'm just right now I'm just painting the tennis court. We haven't pitched the ball yet, so I'm actually just outlining the situation and where I'm looking from. I'm not making any truth claims at the moment, so I'm saying here's what comes from here. Here's what comes from here. It's important to note that they seem to be competing in terms of what is true. And you can always say, well, there's some way in which it all connects and we don't know. Yeah, there's also the possibility that people were just wrong, right?
Anything is possible at this point.
Right, exactly. But the question is, does it matter? So the question is, it doesn't matter on an actual level for us. And I think that it does. I think
maybe that's where the personal comes in. As you were saying, what I feel inside, because obviously we all have different paths, and we're not 8 billion people are not on the path of the monk, or on any other path, or path of a flower, if we want to go in the karmic terms. But everybody is on very different paths, it seems, at least from what we're seeing. So that probably means that for each its own.
Yes, so I'm getting to that. So I guess let me just tell you then the rest of it, so it will make sense to you why I'm even outlining these things. So after they showed me this whole hierarchy of gods, they also showed me that the higher you go, the more you can see down through all the levels. And it goes all through you. It's like an arrow that also goes through you. So literally she can see everything, right? And then I was shown that I was sitting in a room alone with VR glasses, and there's infinite screens. And behind me, there was the Mandelbrot set.
What was behind you?
The Mandelbrot set. You can, I'll pull it up just now so you can see it. You've probably seen it before. It's a really famous fractal. This one.
Mm-hmm.
And what I was shown is that this is behind me, and all the paths of my infinite universe are evolving according to the shoreline of the Mandelbrot set. So you can zoom in, right? So it's actually infinite in its structural complexity, which is how the worlds are automated. So the simulations are running according to the shoreline of the Mandelbrot set. And what it told me is that basically, well, you're alone in your universe, just like you're saying, we all have our paths, alone in the universe, and you're the only one that is like experiencing all of these worlds. But there's others. So there's you exist, you just in your own separate basement. And I'm just a projection in your world. And we just kind of see each other's avatars until the moment that if we meet each other and we have this, what we would call love, I think I mentioned this last time.
After you
okay.
mentioned that.
And if we experience actual love, then it would put us from our own personal sandboxes, it will put us into a space where we're actually in the presence of one another's consciousness. So I would meet the real you. Like right now, I think I'm talking to the real you, and maybe to some extent I do. But for the most part, if we don't experience the full opening of that love, which is actually not that easy to do, we accept each other, but that's different, right? And by the way, even with people that you're with and you're fully committed, you're constantly slipping in and out of it. It's not like it's a constantly, the marriage contract doesn't mean that you're constantly in that shared space. But if you open that channel, it seems that you're being placed together and you're actually interacting with the real conscious being. And then if we do it in a unified as a collective, then we would all be placed together and we would actually be in the presence of one another. And that's, I guess, it's kind of like the waiting room where we can, what you call, ascend, right? And after that, it got very, I don't know what to call it, but to me, it was like really extremely arbitrary because then I was actually showed Jesus Christ. It's not like he came to me, but I saw him ascending from the side. And because this was under the frame of we're showing you how things work, so Jesus is real. Like, he's real. And what I do remember is that they show me Jesus exactly as he exists in our folklore. So people say, Jesus was black, Jesus was this. Well, I don't know, maybe. But what I do know is that they made sure that I understand that it's not some thing like Jesus. They were saying, no, Jesus. Like everything you know about Jesus, exactly like that, was
right?
Real. Did all the things you think he did. Okay. And he basically took the collective karma, because we can't figure it out yet, and he put it on himself to hold it until we can kind of get our act together. And all you have to do to pay currency back is to acknowledge that this was done for you.
This is incredible because that's exactly what the Bible says.
Yes. So, but what I also saw, I think I saw, but this is...
So just to clarify, that you've experienced that.
I saw it with my eyes.
Described.
Yeah, I saw it with my eyes.
But you saw Jesus, but what you've just described, that's something that came to you as an understanding while you...
No. It is it's a foreign concept to me. Was and still is. So I understand that must be the case because it was shown to me under the banner of this is how things work.
But that's what I'm saying. But it was shown to you that Jesus is holding the karmic. What you just said about the karmic weight.
I saw it in the way that it was executed.
Yeah.
So I saw that it was ascending from the bottom all the way to the top, and while he was doing that, what I understood at that instance is that, oh, okay, I understand. It's like in this infinite simulation, there's checks and balances. And even though you are in your own world, the mainframe is still registering what's going on. So if you're a piece of shit, the mainframe knows that. And you would go through certain processes that will kind of amend your process, because it has to do with the energetic imprint that you exhibit, and it will make you drift more towards these worlds that are evolving technically randomly through the Mandelbrot set, but because it makes sense to you and it's all progression of frames that make sense to you, you will more, if you tend to exhibit more what we would call negative traits, you would drift deeper and deeper into these worlds that exhibit more of that, right? Until you start to understand, oh, like I'm controlling it, so maybe I should reroute, okay? And the deeper you go, the harder it is to get out, right? So then, because the system is set up the way it is, so this is already, so this little part that I'm saying now, this is already like a rationalization of mine. I don't know if that's exactly what's going on, but the thing that would make sense to me, but I want to emphasize this, so this was not shown to me directly, but what makes sense to me is that, because if you ask yourself, why would God allow for all the suffering, right? Why would that doesn't make any sense? Well, the only thing that makes sense to me is that if everything exists exactly how it is, so it's self-contained, there would be a certain amount of darkness, a certain amount of light, probably 50-50, but I don't know. And it's just how it is. So if you're talking about the ultimate state of affairs, if things are already the way they are, now it's just a matter of how they are arranged, right? And if that's the case, and you're the ultimate thing, and you can see all of it, the most ethical thing you would be able to do is to say, listen, I don't know why it's this way. I don't know. But it is. So the best I can do is trying to send a message through all the levels in a way that would make sense on every level. So I would say a word, and it would echo in a way that makes sense on every level, right? And I guess to us, it would be something like the Ten Commandments or things like this, or things that we feel inside are like ethical or unethical. And that message will kind of help steer you statistically more towards the less suffering and towards the more good. But at the same time, if you just push away all the darkness completely, what you guarantee is just like with a leaf blower, you basically just push it somewhere else. So you guarantee that somebody else is going to experience more of that, right? So actually the most ethical thing you can do, which is, I believe, is the message. It's not you have to overcome all your shadows. There's no, if we're all going to push it away to one side, then half of the universe is just going to be pure darkness, right? So the responsibility, if you start understanding this, is how much burden can I carry so others don't have to?
Just carry or rework it into light?
Integrate it into your being. So like how much can you integrate into what you are? So it's a balanced state in which you are functioning, enjoying, but at the same time not suffering too much, right? But how much can you take on yourself until things are, fully balanced out? So because if every being in existence would be fair, given that they can understand the state of affairs, they would take exactly 50% of the darkness they can carry, and everybody would do that, and it would be fine. It would be very neutral. It would be equanimity. I would claim that would be nirvana, right? There's just like a perfect flat line. The fact that anything happens, like the game with the numbers that you have to take one number out and then so you can move the rest of them. Well, if existence would, if everything would be perfect, so if God would be perfect, it would have everything set, and also it would contain all the negatives of itself, which means it would cancel itself out, which means it would not occur. Nothing would be occurring. So the fact that anything is occurring at all tells you that at least one piece is missing. That piece is why everything exists. Nothing in existence, including God, knows why everything exists. This is the ultimate question. So now that is the thing that drives all the forces, that moves all the stuff. But within that parameter, you want to try and find the most equitable way of arranging the darkness and the light.
I want to argue on
but before you argue, so there's the other thing to notice is that the darkness itself has qualities that are very creative. So it's not like Darkness does not necessarily equivocate to suffering. Suffering is the resistance to it. And that has to do with ideas that we have about it, right? So there's certain things in darkness that we enjoy. There's dark music that we enjoy. There's carnal sex that we enjoy. There's certain things that like foods are not good for us, but in the instance it feels good. So you can say, well, yeah, well, if you just keep focusing on further and further reciprocation versus the immediate one, the more good you are. Correct. So this is actually how I define the difference between the dark and the light, which the dark is always like the short circuits. It's like the now. And then, but not now in the sense of like accepting the now, but just like give, me. And then the more light it is, the more further you see, right? But if you just cast your hook from the beginning to the end, nothing happens because you just literally went from the beginning to the end and nothing happened in the middle. If you want see any structure whatsoever, you have to have the darkness that will close some cycles in different intervals. So there's structure. So if you have too much structure, it's too rigid. Nothing happens. If you have too much light, nothing happens. It's just an open-ended thing, which, by the way, feminine and masculine, right? Women always want to keep it open-ended for the most part. Guys always want to like close the cycle. What is it? I want to explain, right? But if you have a perfect balance between the two, now you have the yin and the yang rolling. Now you have the whole thing unfolding. You have new structures arising all the time. The feminine keeps opening it up. Let's break it down. Let's move to the next thing. Okay, but the male is like, let's close it here. Let's close it here, right? Now, again, it doesn't mean men and women, because both men and women have the masculine and the feminine. Men carry more of the masculine, both collectively and individually. And it expresses itself in the form that we see, which is, again, why it is just the most fundamental thing that exists, right? And then you have this fluidity of like how things interact. That is absolutely also happening, but it's not like it's not all these extra genders.
That,
so it's like,
by the way,
yeah.
That I actually completely agree with you. I think that's very nice that you sort of put it that way, because it is, in a way, nothing is moving unless there is this darkness and light and a constant sort of balance, trying to balance each other out. I think one thing that I kind of felt might fall hard on people is what you said about carrying the weight, because I think it's very easy to, I don't know exactly how you meant it, but I think it's easy to misunderstand it into just kind of, just carrying the weight, because I think that weight, that darkness can transform into light. And that's the whole game of purifying yourself, maybe not the right word, but constantly evolving, because we are evolving, and if we're not evolving,
I agree with that.
I can
go
rephrase. Back.
I don't mean in the sense that it necessarily has to be weight, but the metaphor of the cross, carrying your cross, right? It's basically the process that you have to go through.
Face it. Oh, maybe that's a good word.
Well, it's not always the most pleasant one, right?
Well, that's why it's a cross.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's the weight.
Yeah.
Okay. The period of time that you have to carry the cross is the part where you're contributing to the system, is what I mean.
I guess what I kind of took from that was there are a lot of people who are carrying the weight, but not facing the cross, meaning not facing...
They're not transmuting it, yeah.
They're not transforming
of course.
it. They're not, doing anything with
100%.
it. And I think that's...
the only thing I would say, and it might sound like it's like, nitpicking at this point, but I don't think it transforms to light, because you just have a set amount of both in existence, and you can't eliminate any of them. Like it's there. Like you can't transmute one to the other. They can flow into one another and they can combine, but energy can never be created or destroyed. It's just a set number of it, and that's it. That's what I meant. If it would be possible to transmute all of it, this whole idea would not make sense, because then God should be able to just do it.
Well, I mean, being able to do it and actually doing it is not necessarily the same thing either.
It would be unethical to not do it.
But if you have free will, quote unquote, then I mean, human beings having free will to sort of to play, if you will, in this world,
well,
the way they, and then because I mean, if you go back to the Bible says you do what you do.
Yeah.
Jesus said, "I give you those command."
I think what is being overlooked here is that if you actually zoom out all the way out, this does not make any sense. We got used to it, so we pay lip service to it because it's like, oh, it sounds profound because it's something we heard a lot of times. But if you really zoom out, it doesn't make any sense. So it's like, you don't. If there's a certain state of affairs that the only way that the act of God giving us the part of the free will out of compassion, wait,
Okay.
instead of out of malicious intent.
Well, God cannot have malicious intent.
Why not? Is God capable of everything?
Yes.
So
But why malicious intent?
that's the question, isn't it? So then, if you really want to grapple with these ideas, you have to be able to entertain ideas that are very uncomfortable.
But no, why? Let me put it this way.
Just
Why
as
for
a
God?
conversation starter,
Well, I
yeah.
know, but why for God to have malicious intent when Satan is right there to take the place? You know what I mean? Like
What?
he has malicious intent. No.
Okay. What if they're the same person?
Okay. So then it's a still, because malicious intent with the good on an equal basis means no movement.
In the whole scheme of things, but not in every point in time.
But then that makes most sense. It's like it's a balanced system, if you will, that comes into disbalance when it comes to this level of the world that we live in. So it exists in a perfect potentiality, and then in this, it's almost like you roll the dice, and then whichever way it falls, a little more bad, a little more good, and then it keeps going.
So I'm trying to take you to the picture beyond that, right? So because you asked me to tell the story
Yes.
of what I saw, so in the context of what I saw, this would be a frame inside of it. So this is a bigger picture. So the part that Christians always love, the part that I mentioned that Jesus is real, but they don't like the part when I'm saying, but there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger thing than Jesus. I have some friends who recently came to Christ, like newly, so obviously they're very evangelized, and they really loved that part. And then I said something, and I shouldn't have, because I need to also know what is appropriate for every situation. It's a beautiful thing. It does nothing but good in their lives. I realized it right away when I said it. It's like, I should not say this in their presence because it does not contribute anything to their lives. But when I said, yeah, but beyond him, they said, there's nothing beyond him. I was like, okay.
No, but when you say bigger picture, we went all the way out.
To the extent that I was shown,
Yes.
and again, with the preamble that I'm not claiming that I now know the ultimate structure of reality, but if we are exploring the idea of what I saw, then it has to be explored under the terms of what it was presented. If you want to say that ultimately none of these details matter, well then, not you, but then people should acknowledge that, okay, well then you're just doing the wrong thing. You shouldn't care at all. Just live your life, right? But if you're already playing the game of trying to decipher this thing, okay, well then it still plays by rules. It's not like it just whatever is whatever. And then there's certain things that make sense, there's certain things that don't make sense. Certain things are gray area. Certain things are not. Certain things are black and white. If there is in fact the state of affairs as it is, then certain things would follow. If everything is malleable, other things would follow, right? So that's all I'm saying. So in terms of what I saw that made the most sense to me, and I'm not putting it as an ultimate truth. I'm saying that what makes sense to me is that there is this attempt to distribute the energy evenly. I think it's basically what you're saying, but there's ways to do it, and it's complicated by the fact that each and every single thing in the universe seems to have this thing we call free will, which of course we don't, by the way. You clearly don't. But this experience that you have of free will is playing some kind of a weird role that points to something outside of reality itself. It seems to be a thing that consolidates things in a way that even reality itself cannot inspect. So it's like the hole in the donut, the thing in the middle that nobody can see. So what I saw, the added part was that Jesus is basically finishing his contract. So we kind of arrived at this point in history where we are now capable to some extent to hold our own karma. Maybe not individually yet because we're not good enough yet, but we can do it collectively. We can keep each other in check. We have enough of a moral scruple intact that we kind of know, how to handle certain situations. So Jesus he's done. He basically took the karma on himself. Now he's releasing it back to us. And we now get to carry the karma collectively. We're kind of entering this new stage of evolution in humanity. And this will also come with all kinds of both perks and responsibilities, which is like there's certain bounds that we can no longer overstep because it's a certain covenant that you kind of have to like adhere to now. And now it's one of these like final steps where we have to prove, not by words but by action, that we really are discerning enough and mature enough to enter this space. And so the part after I feel was more personal to me. That was kind of like the last thing that was shown to me. But I do know that it must be part of this higher function, but I think it was more pointing to me personally. Do you want me to share that, or
I mean, if you like, because it's personal.
Not personal
choice.
In terms of like I don't want to share. In terms of like I don't know how much water it will hold for anything else. But basically, what I was shown is that essentially there is this attempt in reality to both try and understand the ultimate question or answer, and trying to come to terms with just being without trying to do that, right? Just kind of like let go of it, right? And it's a constant flow between the two states. And to me, I'm constantly trying to reconcile them. It's just like you said, you like the Buddhistic and the Christianity. It seems that reality so far is saying, you can't do that, sorry. Like, you got to pick one. And I keep saying, no, come on, like there has to be a way, right? And maybe that's my relationship with reality, which is, what I was shown is just like in the famous Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, I saw a stage with the number 42 on it. So, the answer to life, the universe, and everything. And all of reality was looking at that stage. So all of literally everything I just described to you, there was like in this giant coliseum, and everybody were looking at whatever's happening on that stage. And including her and everybody looking at that coliseum. And then somebody presses a button in the middle of it, and then the point of view pivoted up, so I don't see anymore what's happening there. But I do understand that whatever started happening from that point on was very dramatic, and then it kept on unfolding outwards into like all of existence. So it's almost like now the clock is ticking. And now I saw the whatever event that was, it moved away to be outside of the window. And I can't see what it is, but I can see it's very glowy. Something is very bright is happening outside. And I saw 3 animals, an owl, like a panther or a jaguar, and a dragon from How to Train Your Dragon. And they're all like looking out the window, right? And I'm assuming it's some kind of a symbolic thing, but they're all looking very noble, and they're kind of looking out the window and just looking at it. They're looking at it. They're keeping guard. They're just looking at it. And then I looked further into the room, and a laptop was open, and that was kind of like towards the end of the trip, and Esta Stone was playing. Are you familiar with him? He's actually a really known guitar player. No. Probably Yoni knows. He does this like very, very profound. His shows are like a religious experience. He puts Yoni for sure knows who he is. Oh. He basically puts essence on his guitar. And then he lights it up, and he plays until it's done, nonstop. And then he goes like a break, and then they put another one, and so it's like 2.5 hours or something, and It's just like it's unbelievable, right? He just channels music basically, and it gets to be very dramatic also, like at times. It's almost like the ultimate battle between dark and light kind of thing, and that's exactly what was playing when this was happening. And then I saw on the screen, this enormous amount of messages, like from a million people. It's almost like your thing is going viral, right? It's like everybody are trying to voice themselves, to express their opinions, trying to influence your decision. And then I look to the left and I see Kelsey, and I saw the code in her eye, like that moving. And then I looked at her, and then I look to this part is very annoying to people because I did tell this story before. But this part I have to do this because it's kind of like a decision I made at that instance. Then I saw something in front of me that was happening, and I froze, and I was there for like maybe 5 minutes. I was like, and eventually I think she started getting a little worried. She's like, what? Like, is everything okay? And what I told her is what I'm going to tell you, but I said, on our deathbed, I will tell you what I saw. What I took from this is, at least the first part, is that you can get up and you can look what the answer, like what's going on, right? There's all of this happening. I can sit right here on the couch with her, right? And I don't know if I accept yet that you have to pick. I think that if reality is unified, it has to have the ability to have the unified thing, which is that both dissolving into nirvana and receiving the ultimate question, or the ultimate answer. Am I right about that? Probably not. I'm probably wrong, and reality is probably right. But maybe my journey is to come to terms with it, or to prove reality wrong. I think I know which one's more likely. But that's essentially kind of like was the end of that. And then there was a set of events that happened to me after that solidified, all of these kind of like data points that were happening. And it also gave me some very fun ideas to play with. For example, now we're working with Laszlo. He's a game developer and a VR expert. And we're trying to see if we can, because they showed me like the worlds evolve according to the Mandelbrot set. So like, that's how we do it. Like, we're not going to tell you how we do it, but that's how we do it, technically. So we're trying to see if we can recreate that. We want to see if we can create environments based on nothing on the iteration of the Mandelbrot set. And so far, we actually made some progress. We created terrains that are made purely from the math of Mandelbrot set. So I think it's possible to actually, it might be much more straightforward than we think. Because I thought it would be like one of these, like, what is it called? Da Vinci Code. Like, it would be like, there's some kind of a thing that arises from it, and it's like a key, and then you can input it into something, and it gives you this ability to create a software. It seems to be even much more direct than that. It just has to do something with how you tether it to three-dimensional spaces, and then it kind of builds on top of that. But because it's a fractal, something tells me there's going to be like layers to this. It's not just going to be one thing. One thing I do want to say on this, and then I'll let you tell me what your impression is. I think that ultimately, which is what we started this conversation with, when you bring it down to what matters to each person in their lives, I agree with you that each person would experience their world through their personal view, and there's going to be events happening for them, even if we share the physical space, that might be completely different for them and for you, right? We know this from interaction with people, because some people have like certain, somebody's very sensitive to others' energy, and they're like, oh my God, we were making them so uncomfortable. And then you realize, you can even ask the other person, they're like, I wasn't uncomfortable. It's like they experienced a very uncomfortable situation, but there was no uncomfortable situation, right? So they're experiencing it through their own lens. But it might be true even on a physical level. There might be things happening right now in front of you that I have no idea existed because I've never seen them. But I do want to maybe remind everybody that the unified field is also a thing. And my work revolves around that. So I'm not trying to take anything away from the importance of each and every person's experience. But my work exists in the domain of what is unified. What is that space that we'll share? What is that thing within which, if we open the channel of love, we're transported to the same place? That's the structure I'm interested in.
I think anyone, I want to say, who is brave enough to open their eyes and see will probably experience living in the world of their own on some sort of level. I truly believe that. I've experienced that multiple times.
What do you mean by in the world of their own? Sorry.
Well, when I say precisely as you were describing, that's I have to be careful, because as you were just describing from what you were shown with you being there and then almost projections of people in your world, and yet they're also in their world, and you are a projection
In their world,
to them. So I've had multiple situations where I had conversations with Yoni, let's say, mostly because I think, when you're very close, that's more apparent, which later he would not remember. And I knew the conversation was for me and not for him, and vice versa.
Interesting.
And many, many, many things like that.
That is super interesting.
So that resonates with me because I've experienced that. I think not the problem, but I think what is problematic, and funnily enough, we spoke about Christ and Christianity for so long, but I think he is almost like an emblem of that, where you take something, you have something, and then people make it into something completely different and then crucify it as a metaphor.
Well, it went the other way around, though, so that's important.
Wait.
He was crucified first. It didn't become a religion until like 300
years later.
Yeah,
but there were people there, quote unquote, according to the Bible, following and then twisting whatever he was saying and making something else out of it. So what I'm saying, and I don't know if it's in the Bible, but I think I don't remember who said it, but they said that the teaching of Christ became a teaching about Christ, and that's the problem. So whatever you think about religion and specifically Christianity, that's actually not important. I'm talking to people watching us because it's not so much about that. I'm using it as an image, as a metaphor, because I think that's the biggest challenge for people with everything. But in the world that we talked about last time, which is so full of information and ideas and things, is discerning what is actually true to you, and kind of leaving everything else on the outskirts. But you have to have enough honesty within yourself to notice things, and I think it's actually a very good one of the good indicators is how much it triggers you. If something scares you, I think Jung spoke about it a lot many years ago. If something scares you, that's where you should look. Something is triggering for a reason. So I think I'm sure a lot of people will be triggered by a lot of things that we spoke about.
The idea of the shadow of Carl Jung could not have been more relevant to our time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Because just to give viewers like a super simple breakdown, essentially what it is that according to Carl Jung, anything you're not willing to look into yourself, you will find a way to project it outward, basically. And the way that Nazi Germany arose is that Hitler capitalized on the fact that there was a lot of inability to deal with the level of despair, and it was very easy to trigger it out, and all you needed is a canvas to project it on, and the canvas was the Jews. And then he was like, oh, they're all the evil because I'm pure. I'm the superior race, and that's how everything works.
100%. And people find that outburst very often in much less sort of dramatic and large impacts, but even on personal level. So that's absolutely true. But I think what I'm getting at is what you talked about of while being in your own world, connecting to people. Sort of in the not so much in the shared space, but creating again, not creating. That's like none of the words work. But basically, it's hard when you kind of both on the same page to explain it in words.
Use the word. I think creating is a good word.
Connecting where I've heard something really nice, and I've noticed that a lot of people are not doing that. They say, look, if you wanna, and you're gonna be a parent soon, so that's. They say if you don't look, how many times you look into your child's eyes, that's what's gonna determine their development and your relationship. Nothing else. And
you can never change their diapers. Just look them in dead in the eyes.
No, but it ties perfectly to what you're saying, because if parents, as a fun exercise, would actually go, and try to see how much they're actually looking into their child's eyes, let alone everybody else they communicate with. Just the child. They'll realize how little during the day that happens. And that's the connection, I think, that you're talking about, at least the first steps towards that connection.
Yeah.
Because I think the love that you're talking about starts there.
With the eyes?
Yes, because as they say, the eyes are, the connection to the soul. And again, whichever metaphor you want to use.
Yeah. No, I
but
think
there
there's
is
something very true
powerful about that.
Yeah.
And I think, don't they say the more you lie or the more you're uncomfortable, you kind of look everywhere, but not, in the eyes. Because
unless you're a psychopath and then you're like, look, nothing in the eye.
Yeah. That, of course, is true also. But, luckily, there are not that many psychopaths in 8 billion people, so we're safe. But, and another fun exercise along those lines is how long can you look in the mirror without turning your head away? Blinking is fine, but how long can you actually keep that focus on yourself?
Yeah.
And most people will break that focus within 30 seconds because they just can't face what they're seeing. And I think having that honesty of facing yourself, and that again ties back to the cross, of carrying your cross, well, you have to see yourself first.
Yeah. That's why, by the way, very often doing psychedelics is sometimes very difficult for people, especially the ones that tend to never look at themselves, because there's nowhere to go. It just presents a mirror to you, and you're like, whoa. And there's no one to explain anything to. One of the reasons that in Vipassana there's a big emphasis on not talking, aside from, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is that you don't get to formulate an explanation for anything. So you just have to be with whatever, in fact, it feels like to be you in any given moment, 11 hours a day, 10 days a week. And there's these infinite layers of onions that are happening, because you go like, oh my God, and you're like, so I'm gonna explain this, I'm gonna write it down, and then you go to the next one and you go, that was also just like a cloud. It was just an idea I had. Interesting. And then it keeps happening. This was also just an idea I had. This was also just an idea I had. It eventually you start realizing, maybe I should stopping every time I think I have an idea about it, and just allow it to actually be. Now you still have to do things and, say things and whatever it is you have to do day to day. But just do your best. Like, there's practices you can do even without doing like deep meditative practices that would do a similar thing. For example, if you're in a group and everybody are talking, and all of a sudden there's this thing that you really want to say, and you're like, I'll wait for the opportunity to say. Practice. See if you can practice how long you can go without saying it. And notice how it feels if the conversation abates and it goes to a different direction. You go like, but I want... And just feel that. Just feel that. Why does it matter to you that much? Because you wanted to matter. You wanted to be implied. You wanted to have the world's attention directed at you, so you remember you exist.
But that ties amazingly to what the revelation that you saw and what we're talking about being in your own world. Because another hack, fun
Aside
things
from this wonderful coffee,
fun things that one can do is sit in a restaurant and listen.
Enigma, yeah.
Danny. Sit in a restaurant and listen to the conversations people are having. Your mind will be blown, because
say it again. Listen.
So if you sit in a restaurant and if you're lucky enough to sit next
to people's bathrooms.
If you're sitting next to couples, I mean, I don't mean couples romantically, but if you're sitting next to two people, because more people is a little more complex. But if it's two people talking, a lot of the times you'll realize that they are not talking to each other. They're talking at each other.
Yeah.
They're literally talking to themselves, trying to convince themselves of something, trying to solve a problem for themselves, trying whatever it is, but they're literally talking to themselves. And the other person is just there because if they were not there, it would just be weird.
Yeah.
And they just don't even realize that.
Yeah.
And is that not existing in your own world
Yeah.
without?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And people don't, they don't even realize it, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
That's literally what you do.
This is why it's so hard to connect, because, nicely kind of brings us to the sex conversation, because there you have, in this space, the way we measure realness is really anything that interacts with the electromagnetic field. So the reason you can't put your hand through the table is because the electromagnetic field prevents the atoms in your hand to move through the atoms of the table. When you touch another person, that's a verification that there's a solid thing there that you're actually talking to, right? And when it comes to sex, the sexual energy the sexual attraction can bring you to the act, but very often the actual internal state of the people involved doesn't follow the same thread. It follows the same thing you were saying, which is that they're just there with themselves.
100%.
And then that's how they have to project themselves in their minds to something else instead of being with that. And sometimes it's very challenging because you might have a lot of things on your mind, or there's like traumas that prevent you from actually dropping into that space. But when you finally do, there's this presence that is there that is very different than if you would just be banging. Right? There's like a very
100%.
different kind of a thing. And it has nothing to do, by the way, with this difference that people outline between making love or fucking. We're talking just the actual state. It can be carnal. It can be whatever.
Well, because making love can also be a complete idea in your head.
Yeah, but I'm not even pointing to that difference between the I guess the softer,
whichever one you're saying, whichever.
But it's an important difference. Like if it can be super carnal, and at the same time there can still be a connection there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but that's a big distinction, because sometimes the idea that people have is that, well, is the vibe soft or the vibe hardcore? No, it has nothing to do with that. It's, does your internal state matches whatever it is. In fact, like you said, look at whatever it is really it is actually happening. There's one of the things that when I was in my 20s and was trying to figure out the female mind, one of the things I learned, thank God, is that women don't mind at all almost anything that guys actually want. What they do mind is if what you're saying doesn't match how you behave. So if you're saying the real thing, if you just want to sleep with the woman, but you're...
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You're just like, hey, that's what I want. If there's no dissonance between what you're saying and the way your body behaves, then she feels safe. And if she's attracted to you to any extent, no problem. But what happens usually is that guys trying to like outsmart the situation, when in reality they didn't need to do any of that. They just needed to be like stream the energy exactly how it is. Now in that space it's very pronounced, but it's basically it exists in everything.
And
like everything is like this. It's like if your energy just doesn't match what you're trying to do, you will find yourself in the wrong job.
I think
you would waste 20 years of your life in the wrong career. You would get a heart attack at 40. All of it is exactly the same thing. You're not following the true moment of what in fact is happening with you, and you just have all these ideas about what you think it matters. Well, what Toyota I'm going to get next year. I'm not even berating that element. I'm just saying that can't be the thing you derive meaning out of.
I know exactly what you're saying. I think it's almost like, again, tying everything that we spoke about, and last time when we spoke about humanity being just exiting the childhood, is the fact that I think we're just sort of touching the surface of finally starting to look in the mirror, where we're just starting to realize there's actually something there. Let's look at it, because I think...
Ooh, I just realized something very interesting while you were talking. Keep going. Yeah.
I think, and I don't know, I guess I was lucky. Now I think I was lucky with that. Before I thought it's a curse. I was always I always felt that honesty is much easier for me than lying. And I try to hold myself to the same standard, meaning when I look internally, I try to do the same thing. And not always it happens. Sometimes you want to...
Sorry, I'm cutting you. Was it always like this for you? Or is it...
It was always like that.
Okay.
I think I was just born with that, where I almost in the body I felt uncomfortable, and I don't mean about like stupid lies. Like I sometimes people want to take it to the extreme. Like if a woman is not looking their best, but they say if this dress is good on me, I'm not gonna say
Bitch,
no. This looks
that
awful.
dress is whack.
yeah. You whatever. But I mean in the most important way, and it's a process. It's not something that I'm so good at. It's a process because looking at yourself honestly, that's the hardest thing. And sometimes not because you don't want to look, but sometimes that shadow, as Jung would say it, is skillfully hiding, specifically not to show itself. So it's that constant dance. But I think, and I would tell it to anybody, if you try to be honest with people and yourself for one day, by the end of that day, you'll have so much energy. You would not feel like it's been a day.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't realize how much energy we actually waste on all those little unimportant lies. And I think there are two main reasons for that. One, obviously, you're trying to lie to yourself because you're so afraid to face what's there. Because we've been tricked to think it's something scary. It's actually not scary at all. It's as you were saying, society bombarding you with you need to want a Toyota or now you need to want a Lamborghini, whatever, like all those constructs. And but once you actually face yourself, I think it's a fascinating journey. But even with people, that's what we were talking about, like just sitting with people and being honest, even if you have nothing to say or you're afraid. Like how often do we say, I feel nervous, or I don't know what to say, or this silence is uncomfortable. How do you feel?
Yeah.
We don't do that.
Yeah.
We've been trained and conditioned to hide everything that we're feeling unless it's sort of funneled through something that's okay, and everything else is just, you kind of have to close yourself off. And I think if we want to use the metaphor of Satan, that's Satan, because you're literally doing what's against your best.
And but it is a balance, right, between what you want for yourself now, and it might even feel fully aligned, and what it might do to the rest of you, which is the rest of people in the world. The expression of, even if it's just projections, it's all projections from you. So like what that would do, it basically signifies, which is the thought that as you were talking, I just realized that the reason that it must be important to enter as many people as possible into this channel of love is because then the second you enter that channel, it by vibrating that channel, you now automatically can be trusted to reflect to others.
But
see what I mean? Because before you had to have like just reflections of you,
and I guess
because others cannot be trusted because they have their own little. But if you're fully entering with love, now reflecting back is a lot more informing.
I guess that was my point, because you kind of on the next step, and my point being a step before, where in order to do that, you have to face yourself.
Oh yeah.
And for yourself and for that, what you're describing, which is entering that love, I think...
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Why have you never done, like, or maybe you haven't, I misunderstood, like a high dose of something, like mushrooms or...
I'll tell you.
Okay.
I've never done any drugs.
Okay.
Nothing.
Okay.
I have this notion. It is a notion, but because I feel it deep inside, I'm not fighting that notion, at least just yet, is that I think I can reach the same place without.
How can you possibly know that?
I cannot know. I don't know. I trust that. I believe that.
Okay.
And the path of quote unquote a monk is the appealing path for me, if you will. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't mean it quite literally, but you understand, like as a metaphor. Don't ask me why this notion, but it was always there. And you see, obviously I've been exposed to things, but it never it was something inside always. I just never wanted, just never wanted to make that
But
step.
it's not fear.
I cannot know for sure. So I'm not going to eliminate that, that possibility. I mean, I think partly it is fear, but fear maybe because before I would say, oh yeah, it's definitely fear because I'm afraid what's there. But I think now it's more of a fear
Of being derailed.
Yes.
But if you are already in the ultimate truth, how can you be derailed?
Not so much derailed. So much derailed. But it's almost like I cannot even find a good example. It's almost
you have a good thing going. Why ruin it?
Yes. More like that. More like that. I kind of, it's like someone when they have a system of losing weight, and it's a pretty holistic system, and someone says, something else works too, maybe even faster.
Yeah.
But I already have a good system going, I think, and I want to explore that path.
Right.
No,
I accept it fully.
Yeah.
I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also ask myself that question. That's why I'm glad that you asked too.
Yeah. It is.
I had another conversation with myself just for a second answering.
Yeah. No, I mean it also depends exactly what. But yeah, I fully accept that there's when you know, there's a certain particular part of you that kind of, and also it's expressed in certain things that are out here in the world, right? If your whole life is falling apart, all your relationships are a mess, I do think that you have much more of an obligation to look into some things. You have a super successful business, incredible husband, a kid, you have things are flourishing. So there's no reason to doubt the process, and I fully accept that.
Yeah. I think for me, looking inwards was always a big thing. Maybe because there was or is sort of some underlying fear or guard that says, the false prophets out there. And I mean more in terms of more spiritual gurus at this point.
There's definitely, it's very difficult to find somebody.
But there's so many, and people, and sometimes people have a little bit, that's also a problem. Sometimes people have a little bit of the truth. But
it's always the case. Yeah, of course.
Well, sometimes it's a complete BS. There are those too.
Especially the people who did it a couple of times and now they feel that they're teachers. Yeah, it's amazing to me.
And I mean, look, I think if you, and that's the thing, because I think we truly have nothing but this mechanism, ultimately.
Yeah.
Or at least it's the most available to us. And it can do so much. Because, for example, those people... and behind the scenes, we might know who those people are. But sometimes in the vibration of the voice,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If you're, in tune enough to feel that. And when I say in tune enough, there's absolutely no gradation. Anybody can do that. It's like intuition. Anybody can do it. You just have to. It's almost like fasting. You have to, quote unquote, fast your system, where you have that. You're connected to that and you feel it. And anybody can do it. But I think it's like with weight, and I've been there. When you feel it's too much of a task, you don't want to do anything. When you have to lose a little, oh my God, you're so much more willing because you see the end goal. The most problematic thing, and I think that's why it's the hardest thing to make the first step, is because we do not see the target. It's like walking in the dark.
Yeah.
You don't know what exactly the whole conversation we were having today, but how do we know? We're making steps.
You have a direct experice that should map onto it.
Yeah.
Here's an example.
But maybe someone is, tricking my brain or doing something. You know what I mean?
What's interesting is that there is a component there that cannot be tricked if you just allow yourself to fall into it. There's a certain neutrality you can fall into from which you cannot actually be tricked.
Yeah.
That's true. So you can actually see things for what they are versus what you think they are. And it takes some practice, but yeah.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I actually completely agree with you. And I think and for me, that's the interesting journey. Sort of the visual that I kind of came up with for myself is like as if you have a lot of veils in front of your face, and you're slowly uncovering veil by veil. When you get to veil 5, you think, "Oh my God, I'm seeing so good," but then the 6th one goes. You think, "What? I was not seeing anything," and then it goes and goes and goes, and every time it's the next one.
Our technical project is called Veil Break. So
I can't believe this. Wait, tell me more about it.
It's just the like all the stuff that has to do with the technical stuff, like building software, physicists, all that stuff. We call it Veil Break, which was uttered. That term was coined by Chase Hughes.
Okay.
Shout out to Chase, he's amazing. And he's like, it just came to me. I think it's a perfect thing.
That's crazy.
It's yours to use.
You see? I mean, isn't it a sign that we're all connected? I didn't know who Chase is, and yet we kind of have the same imagery.
Oh yeah. No, it's kind of it's amazing how it all just connects. But I think that what I'm constantly trying to do, when you told me originally that you wanted to do the second part and talk about this higher thing, I just enjoy your energy. So I would do your podcast again and again just to enjoy your company. But when you said that, I was like, I don't really know, because I sometimes tell that story as a throwaway, like as another thing, never like as a central thing, because I feel like unless you can connect it to something that is actionable for people, it doesn't really do anything of value, right? So I think we did good enough to like connect it to some things that are actionable, but I do think that people should always seek to translate any teaching that they might be interested in into something that they can test every single day.
100%.
But to you it's obvious, but I think it's not at all how most of it is practiced. Like people that, whatever it is, it doesn't really matter, but they're into something. If you are not willing to test it every single day, Ido Portal?
No.
So he's kind of like this really known movement guy, okay? He's actually Yohai's cousin. I don't know if you know Yohai Portal, yeah. But he's kind of like became really famous when he trained McGregor, but he trained a lot of very known athletes, and he has a whole workshop. He's more of a philosopher, but he's really a very unique person. And his whole thing is that there's something about motion that leads to this central thing. And he always makes this difference between motions and the motion. So, for example, if you do this practice of like a spine wiggle that he teaches you, I had the pleasure of meeting him one time, and he explained like that thing that you do, eventually what you want to try and do and make it subtler and subtler, and eventually all you're left with is the motion. So you actually don't have to do the actual action anymore, but your brain feels the motion itself. And he never likes like repetitive things of any kind. He talks a lot about how the West basically hijacked yoga and made it into something that is actually more akin to like ballet training and acrobatics.
I agree.
Because it's not what yoga was, because yoga was actually about the fluidity, and it was never about these like very square movements. What I'm mentioning him is because he has this thing where he says, we basically take everything and we make it into something that is something we've seen before and we just want to repeat. When in reality, the test always comes from the truth of the present moment. So one example he gives is that he has some people who come to his workshop and they are like really big into like meditation, let's say, and they've been practicing for 20 years, I don't know. And then he says, you know what's interesting? If I give them a broom and just a stick of a broom, I was like, here, balance it on your finger. And then they try and do it. And then it's like, okay, now meditate. And they can't do it. So he's like, so you've been doing this thing for 20 years when you're sitting in a chair and you not once practice doing a simple task while meditating? So really what you've been practicing for 20 years is how to sit in a chair without moving. But if you can't take it with you, if you can't actually, and ever since he told me this, because I am a Vipassana practitioner, ever since then, when I'm talking to people, I'm trying my best when I can remember, can I bring that presence here? Can I put it in my body? Can I eliminate the connection with the thinker that is trying to tell me I need this or that, and just kind of just be there, right? And of course I fail all the time, but at least I'm trying to practice it. And it's so funny how people are now willing to test it. They just know. Like you said, because we know. I just know it.
But that's why, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because that's why, that's what I was kind of trying to point to when we spoke about science last time, and I was kind of taking a little jab at science.
Please.
Precisely for that,
Which is?
with that point is you have to put it into practice for yourself.
Can you give me an example? Because I don't remember the pushback.
You just said that in the moment when something, and by the way, most revelations or most, some call it jumps in consciousness or whatever, happen in the most obviously unexpected way, and you cannot measure it, you cannot do anything about it, you can just feel it, sense it, it's there. And you cannot repeat it, you cannot reproduce it.
The epiphany?
Well, an epiphany is sort of more kind of mind-oriented, right?
So what can't you repeat?
Well, an epiphany you can't repeat either, but it's more happening in the body. Wouldn't you agree? When you have some sort of a revelation, you kind of, you feel it with your whole body.
I'm trying to imagine the object you're handing me. I do not quite understand what you're talking about, because you just said there was a pushback to science.
Well, you said that.
Yeah. Feel free, by the way. I love it. I just want to know what you're saying.
You said that it's funny that when something happens in the moment.
Yeah.
As your friend.
Well, it's just that you never practice to test your own. The thing that you believe that you're doing when you're meditating is that you're becoming a more balanced person. But if you practice for 20 years to be more balanced only when you're sitting, and you never practiced it while balancing another physical object, then you just specialize in this very unique thing.
Yes, but before
it doesn't do anything in real life.
But before you said that it's those things that happen in the moment, you can't really reproduce them on a, like under a microscope.
So I'm asking, what are those things that you're pointing to? Because I'm not understanding.
Well, I would call them, it's kind of hard to label things, especially these days, because all those labels are so hijacked. But like a spiritual revelation or some sort of revelation.
Connection to the divine, you mean?
Yeah. In whatever way, or even a revelation about movement.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure your friend at certain point came to that. What he's teaching. What he is teaching.
So to point out something, to see if we're actually describing the same thing, because this was a conversation starter, not a final word, right? The progression from that point is, now you should remember to practice doing your meditation while you do other things. So the answer is still the repetition. It's just now your focus is on a different thing of what actually works.
But in that regard, each repetition hopefully will give you a different result. That result is gonna be more, if you will, more revealing. You'll find out more things. It's not gonna be the same. You're gonna repeat it, but you're not gonna come to the same conclusion every single time.
So I think what you're trying to say. And you'll
open more and more. It's like a cabbage. You'll keep opening more and more layers with each quote unquote practice.
I think what you're trying to say to me is that what you're trying to outline is that if you do this practice in this particular way, if you just allow yourself to be in the present moment, the right answers will come.
Yes.
And the answers would be surprising and relevant to the situation.
Correct.
What I would add to that is that there are particular practices. So there's specific things you can do that will statistically raise the possibility of you entering that space from which these things will become more available. So a technique is still involved, and a truth claim and a knowledge is still involved about it. You're not going to, if I tell you that, well, listen, if start your morning with doing 3 lines of cocaine, okay, and then sit and meditate.
You're talking to the right person, obviously.
There's something about this that is false, objectively. There's no person in the world that it would help, right? So there's something to still be said about the truth claim about something. So you can say, yes, there is this infinite wisdom and energy in the present moment, but there are truths about how you make it yourself more available for it to be noticed.
But even with meditation, if you tell someone, oh, you should meditate every single day, in 20 years, they might be the people that your friend were referring to who. You know what I mean? I'm not putting them down, but I'm saying
I'm just pushing
you might
back
miss the points. What I'm saying,
I think the premise is incomplete. I think that there's still a practice. So when you meditate, there's a particular thing you're doing. You're not just sitting in a chair. You're practicing something very specific. You're doing something inside that is the same for everybody in terms of what you're doing with your attention. It then gives results of a certain kind. The point in the story, and I think also Ido's point, but I can't know for sure, but I think that was the point, which is that the emphasis was wrong, because you always want to emphasize the practical, even though you're interacting with this higher thing, and allow it to come into fruition in the practical. So like you're bringing the divine into the practical. But so I don't think it's. So if I understand your pushback correctly, you're saying that if people put too much emphasis on, and you just correct me if I'm misunderstanding it, but what I'm hearing is that the pushback is around the point of, if you put too much emphasis on the technical, without realizing that what you're really aiming for is this connection with this present moment, then you will always miss the mark. Because the main thing, is that about
what I'm saying is, and then correct me if I'm wrong, because you know way more about science than I am.
No, I'm just asking if I understood you correctly.
Yeah. I'm relying on my understanding of science, where science praises you if you do the same thing and get the same result.
Okay, that's the thing I was missing. Okay,
the problem with, not the problem, but the sort of the missing link when you talk about, you know, inner development and everything else we just spoke about, is that that's exactly what you do not want. You want to repeat and hopefully come to more revelation and different ways of looking at it. Because if you're repeating the same thing and getting an exact same result, you're not going anywhere. In this kind of cabbage uncovering of the veils, if you will, uncovering, because it feels to me that it's a constant. You want to allow yourself
to keep going.
It's a constant process of uncovering.
Sure.
So if you're repeating the same thing and getting the same result, meaning you're sitting in a meditation for an hour and you're so proud of yourself that for this hour you were so meditative, you were so focused, and then you come out and you start cursing someone. Nothing wrong with cursing someone, but are you getting out of that equilibrium so fast, or you were just never in the equilibrium because you're repeating the same thing with the same result, but you're not getting any revelations, any new experience out of it, because you think, oh, check mark, I'm meditating, I'm doing exactly, it's quote unquote scientific.
I think that the equivocation slightly misses the mark for me, because it's almost like not a category mistake, but it's almost like the category is just off. You know how you have like this colored aberration? It's like it's just on the side. Because science is in the business of trying to understand what the world is doing, right? It's very clear. Like the mission statement of science as a whole, that is actually a contentious statement, but I think should be pretty clear. Science is trying to understand the world. So it tries to observe what the world is doing, right? In that regard, if you keep doing a thing and you get something else, we're not tracking what the world is doing, because the world, at least the physical world, seems to be regular. Like it's doing a regular behavior thing where it repeats certain things again
Unless
and again.
some shaman comes and does something that throws that out of... I'm just playing devil's advocate, but that happens.
No, but that's exactly where the category mismatch happens for me. Because when you're talking about the inner space, contemplative art, you're exploring an infinite possibility space that still maps onto something physical, which is the architecture of our brain, so the way that we perceive the world. There's still truths to be known, just like the one that I gave with like, you're never going to get anywhere if you're going to start your morning every day doing cocaine. That's a truth claim about what is true about your experience as a whole. When you get into the specifics of what meditation is, you start to understand that it's not even... I always say that meditation is the science of the internal, because you're paying attention very closely to the thing you're trying to study. It's just that the thing you're trying to study, which is your inner experience, is infinitely more diverse and malleable than the physical world. This is why this equivocation doesn't
I
work
see
for
what
me.
you're saying.
Because you do notice regularities. They're just much, much more fluid and malleable. But there's still columns of truths you can adhere. For example, first of all, if you step out of I know how you meant it, but if you step out of a meditation hole and you feel proud, you already missed the point. The point of meditation is you're really just practicing non-attachment. That's all you're practicing. There's different forms of doing that, but you have an object of attention, and then you basically just keep noticing how bad you are at keeping the attention on something, and also how out of control you are when things are constantly trying to tug you away and from things. So like you want something or you don't want something, and you keep pushing it and pulling it. So really the practice, if I have to put one umbrella over all meditative practices, the ultimate goal is to basically realize there is no self, and but the main tools are training your attention in a way that does not get attached to anything, and you just keep going, and then you fail, and you keep going, you fail, you keep going, you fail, you keep going. But the definition of what you're doing there, you're interacting with a truth possibility space that is infinitely more diverse than the physical world. This is why it's a little different. But it is not, maybe not in essence different, but they're not mutually exclusive. Science, if I have to connect them together, and this I don't know if this will make you feel uncomfortable. You seem to be pretty open-minded, but like people don't like this idea, and I get it, but if it's true, it's true, you know? It might be the case that if we figure out enough about Neuralink and how it can influence the brain, maybe there's a way to just upload enlightenment.
What a fun idea.
But then when you think about it, like I bet you that most people listening, right, if you ask them, would you do it? They'll say no. But then if you ask them why? Well, because it's not what? No, I'm talking like full enlightenment. We're not talking about like a let's say we figure out that it's literally the same state.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you do that? Well, because you want what? You want the hard work? Oh, so you find pride in the fact you're doing it. Interesting.
But
you see what I mean? Like you see how.
But sometimes maybe people even not out of pride, but maybe the hard work. No,
let's say we discover that it
is the purpose.
No, but hold on.
Is the
Who
purpose
defines
of this
the purpose?
exist? Well, no, nobody. But I'm saying, what if internally?
Yeah.
That's the whole game.
But
nothing is gained without
the
quote
scenario
unquote
that
the
I'm
hard
painting
work.
right now is that we already discovered that is not the case. We discovered that there's just a state of mind.
I'll give you another scenario.
Sure.
Completely physical. This table.
Yeah.
It's solid, right? Supposedly. But the space between the molecules of this table is so much greater than the solidity of this table, which we do not see. To us, it's a solid object.
Sure.
So, or an infrared seeing. We don't see an infrared, but there is infrared. There are infrared.
The light spectrum. Right?
Yeah, light spectrum. We just don't see it, but it doesn't mean that it's not part. What I'm getting at, it's all part of this physical world. It's not accessible to our eyes. And then you take a chi master who can break this table, or whatever.
So far, all
master.
of these cases were proven to be hoaxes, just so you know. Every
Really?
single one. Yeah.
Well, how do you know that every single one?
There is not one. There's the James Randi Foundation that gives $1 million to anybody who can prove their actual powers under laboratory conditions. Nobody could ever do it.
Okay, what about telepathy?
Okay, telepathy tapes, right?
Studies. Soviet Union did extensive studies on telepathy, telekinesis, moving with...
So you would, whatever the answer will eventually be, it would involve some medium through which this information moves that we're simply not aware of in the moment.
That's what I'm saying. But
what is the point? I don't understand.
The point is, well... Again, the point is not at you, but...
no, you can make the points at me. I enjoy it.
But the problem with, to me...
As long as I understand exactly what you're saying.
The problem with contemporary science is that everything is so boxed out. So
most people... But before you continue, everything you just outlined, the fact that we know about molecules, the fact that we know about atoms and all the stuff that you just said, the only reason we know any of this is science. Not because of the shaman, not because of the religious person. The only reason we know this is because of science.
So, well, wait a second. Okay. Let's take more extreme example
Sure.
like telekinesis.
Sure.
Of course, some shamans somewhere have known, and maybe some of them even used those powers before science got interested.
Sure.
And by the way, I was reading a very interesting book. Forget the name. He's a Mexican scientist, and he disappeared. It's like a big
what's his name? Greenberg or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually read a book about the Mexican shamans that he wrote, just describing what kind of crazy things they do. I don't know if it's true.
But what is the point you're making about it?
The point I'm making is
aware of
completely
these things.
unscientific.
I don't
Quote,
agree
unquote.
with. I don't agree with that.
No,
It
I mean
depends-
to the mainstream science.
But
it's,
but see, so to me the question: do we have a hard out? By the way, just so I know.
I actually have no idea. So they have something at 3. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well,
I have to run.
we can wrap it up.
Yes.
All right. So, well, let's table this for part 3. That would be a fun.
Sounds good.
At some point.
Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you so much.